Okay, and we can go ahead and get started.
All right.
Thanks, Dustin.
Yeah, I'll take over. I'm going to introduce Jessie, and then Laura's going to introduce Gordon, and then we're going to go hand it over to Jessie, who's going to be talking about NPSP architecture. And then after that, Gordon will talk about how to help a nonprofit. So Jessie
actually
Rymph
gonna.
is...
Oh, sorry. I'm going to introduce Gordon. Sorry, go ahead, Dustin. That's it.
Oh, sorry about that.
No problem. Go ahead.
I was like, I am.
Somebody will introduce Gordon.
Yeah. All right. Jessie Rymph is a senior industry demo architect at Salesforce now, but she spent years at different nonprofits in Seattle, sending out emails, adding donations to databases, and printing thank you letters. She became a Salesforce admin at a youth development organization in 2011 and has been blazing trails ever since. She joined Salesforce.org in 2018 to write and deliver webinars to nonprofits, starting out with NPSP. Her current role is much more technical. She actually writes Apex code, and she still focuses on nonprofits. She knits, often during Zoom meetings. She reads tons of fiction, rides her bike, and nerds out with her husband, who is also a member of the Ohana. So go ahead and take it away, Jessie.
Oh, wait, I'm going to introduce Gordon, and then Jessica will start.
Got it, sorry.
No one needs to introduce me.
Yeah,
it's all good.
We're not going to forget you, Gordon. We got you.
It's all good. It's all good.
So excited to announce my good friend and fellow Boba Blazer. Gordon Lee is a Salesforce solution architect at Common Sense, a nonprofit dedicated to helping kids and parents thrive in a world of increasing media and technology use. A native San Franciscan, first-generation Chinese American, and 12-year addict of the Salesforce ecosystem, Gordon started off as an external admin and has never looked back. His passion is helping nonprofits focus on strategy, not tasks, and he believes that in order to empower others, you first have to empower yourself. His favorite Salesforce mascot is Astro, but he has been told it should be Cody by his wife, who shares the same name. Over to you, Jessie.
Okay. Oh yeah, okay, so I work for Salesforce, so I have to share this slide with you, which means please make your purchasing decisions based on currently available products, not on anything I say that is forward-looking. Okay, sorry. Okay, so I am, oh, okay, sorry, Zoom pop-up. Okay. I am going to share what I think makes Nonprofit Success Pack interesting architecturally. And I kind of guessed at what that means. So we'll see. And a lot of you here work in nonprofits or have worked on Nonprofit Success Pack. So there are a lot of people here who know a lot more than I do, who've been in it for a lot longer. And when I worked at a nonprofit, we were actually on the Groundwire version of nonprofits. So I did not work in NPSP directly until I started, well, directly ever. Then I started teaching people about it. So we're going to talk about how it works. It's pretty cool if you're into data architecture. And we're going to look at three things which I think make NPSP really pretty interesting. How we connect our accounts, our opportunities, and our contexts, and how we import data, and how easily we can manage our triggers. So if you have something that you think I'm missing, what makes NPSP really cool from an architecture standpoint, please add that in the chat for everyone to see. Okay, just want to clarify also, first of all, we're talking about Nonprofit Success Pack, which has been around for a while. It's a managed package. It sits on top of the Salesforce core. And Paige is going to be talking about the new Nonprofit Cloud product, which is completely separate and is coming out soon, or is already out. It's out. So I'm going to be talking about Nonprofit Success Pack first. Okay, so this is the entity relationship diagram, the ERD. Ooh, this is complicated, right? So if you are new to Salesforce, an ERD is how we look at all the different objects and how they connect. We're going to be zooming in here and talking about accounts, contacts, affiliations, and relationships. So these affiliations and relationships are objects specific to NPSP, and we use accounts, contacts, opportunities a little bit differently. So our contacts are similar to other ways of using Salesforce. These are our volunteers, our donors, our clients, anyone who we interact with, or who interacts with our organization. We don't typically recommend record types for your contacts, because all of these people could be all of these things at once, right? One person can be a volunteer, a donor, and a client or former client. So record types you can use to kind of silo people, but we recommend categorizing people in a different way with NPSP, because one person can be all of these things. An account. So accounts, we do use record types. We have two different record types that are our primary go-tos here. So households on the left, every contact in NPSP has a household. That is a group of people who live together, generally is how that is used. So a household in this example is 3 people. So we have 3 contact records that are connected to that household. And by connected to the household, I mean on that contact record, their account looks up to this account that is specifically their household. It's called the, I live in the Rymph Nostal household. So it combines, you can combine the 2 last names to name your household. An organization is any other business or other nonprofit that your organization works with. You track those on account records using an organization record type. So affiliations. Affiliation is a junction object. That means it's an object that we use to connect a contact to an account. So this gentleman is an alum of University of California. He has an affiliation record that connects him to his UC, and so his contact record does not look up to his school. His contact record connects or looks up directly to his household record, and his affiliation record is what connects him to where he went to school, where he volunteers, and where he works. You can have a primary affiliation, which is typically used for the employer. And if you have questions, you can put them in chat, and folks who know, again, much more than I do can probably help you out. And for a lot of you, this is going to be review. But relationship is another junction object we use to connect to contacts. So the person in the middle has a relationship object that says this person is the mother, this person is the child, and connects that relationship. You can have any kind of relationship you want. Mentor relationship, for example. We use opportunity records, but we use them just a little bit differently. So in sales, where Salesforce comes from, opportunities are for deals, or for something you're selling, or for tracking your widgets are sold to Acme Corporation. Well, in NPSP, we use our opportunities for our donations. We have different record types based on type of donation. Typically used are donation, whether it's from an individual or an organization or a grant. You can also have different record types for in-kind gifts, matching gifts. There's lots of different ways to track your opportunities, but that is our primary way of using this object, is for our donations. And stepping back, that is the main thing, or one of the main uses of NPSP itself, is for tracking money that comes into a nonprofit. So we take the basic Salesforce pack or Salesforce and add on these features that kind of shift a little bit how we're using the objects and add additional objects and fields to make it work for our needs. The NPSP data import utility is pretty cool architecturally. It is, also kind of dull because it's about spreadsheets importing stuff, but if you're into this stuff, it's pretty awesome. So when you're importing data into Salesforce, there's a bunch of different tools you can use. But if you're importing into Nonprofit Success Pack, you're going to want to use the NPSP data import utility, because you take one spreadsheet and you import all of your data at once. If you're using another tool, you often have to import, then export, do a VLOOKUP, match on IDs to get all of these different things to get your accounts, your contacts, your opportunities in at once. With the NPSP data import utility, you import your data all at one time, and it goes into a holding object, the NPSP data import object, and then you click some more buttons, and all of that data goes out and creates all of these records that are all at the same time, and they're all interconnected. So let's look at that. I'm going to stop sharing and see here, share my screen again. Okay. This one over here, sharing. Okay. So this screen is a sample NPSP dummy data that has been into the right format for being imported into the account, or sorry, to the NPSP data utility. So this spreadsheet I have on here for Dottie Shears. She doesn't have an account name. That's fine. The account name in this case is going to be generally the primary affiliation. Each person, each row you import, or each person is going to be put into their own household. That's going to be created automatically and connected. And we fill in all of this great contact information here. Another cool thing that NPSP offers is a way to have multiple email addresses per person. So we have 3 here, and you can put in personal, work, and alternate, and then you say which one is their preferred. And that, with a workflow in the background, rolls up to the email field where you can track, and that's what you use to email them through Salesforce. So also on the same spreadsheet, we can have on the same row is another person who lives in this household. So Dottie is partnered with Aaron. And so because they're in this one row of the spreadsheet, they're going to be in the same household. Also, each row represents a gift. So they gave, scrolling all the way over here, they gave twice, and I'm importing this data, and it's going to create their 2 different gift records, 2 different opportunities. They're going to be in the same household. All of this is going to be connected. Let's see how this works. So when I import this, I have done my import here. Let's go back to my import settings. All of this data is then stored into an object called NPSP data imports. So here it's a holding place for all of these records. I bring it in, and it is going to populate these fields here with the information. This represents one row of that spreadsheet. So one person, this is primary affiliation for the second person. So we have the data for person 1, contact 2, their accounts. We can even have recurring donations, payments, a couple more objects here. You can, with nonprofits, people are interested in tracking where does the money go. If I'm donating toward or giving to an animal shelter, am I giving towards the education fund or directly towards dog food, for example? You can use general accounting units to say where the money is going to go. We also are concerned in NPSP with opportunity roles. So this donation, who solicited it? Who asked for the gift? Or is there another person who should get partial credit for it? With nonprofits, we're very focused on giving people credit for the gifts they give, right? giving everyone recognition if they influenced a gift, or if they, who needs to get listed in the back of the annual report as a donor. So we have lots of different ways of connecting people to the gifts to make sure they get any type of credit that they deserve. Then once I finalize this, I'm going to say I want to import these records. Oh, it also dedupes. It can dedupe for you. It can say, oh, this matches up against someone I already have in the database. Do you want to modify or mush these two records together? And you can use your own duplicate rules for that. So this is a great feature of NPSP for getting all of your data in. Now, I would not say quickly. I'm doing this right now for a nonprofit, and it is taking me forever. So, but in a way that isn't gonna, it could be harder. Say that it could be a lot harder using different spreadsheets, all tracking the same data. Okay, this one I'm going to need my notes on. You can all see my notes right over there now, can't you? Let me just go into slideshow mode. So TDTM is the next thing I am talking about, table-driven trigger management. Oh no, it started at the beginning here. Okay, there we go, slideshow. All right. So this is an amazing feature in NPSP that particularly works for developers, but also for admins who have developers at their company. So trigger handlers are used to control when certain Apex fires. So this is automation that happens in the background. So the TDTM, the trigger handlers, allow you to turn off when the piece of this code is going to run. So you can say, when Jim is importing records or modifying records, we always want this code to run. When Pam is importing records, we don't want that code to run. So you can make it specific based on the person, or let's say when you are doing your importing, you don't want some of these triggers to fire. You can turn these things off in a way that looks like a regular Salesforce pick list, like you can see here on the slide. You can turn things off pretty easily. So you can do some pretty complex automation, or turn things on and off based on this version of trigger management, which is something that when people switch from NPSP to working in regular Salesforce, they're like, wait, where is that? I really needed that for my work. And that is all I wanted to say right now about NPSP. Thank you so much for listening. And we're going to turn it over to Gordon.
Thanks, Jessie. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. Are you still driving, or do you need to switch over to Dustin?
Great point. I'm going to switch over to Dustin.
Got it. No worries. Thanks, Jessie. That's super helpful. I almost forgot about TDTM. FYI, for those of you studying for their nonprofit cloud consultant, that's at least one question on the exam. So make sure you take a look at that thing. I'm hoping I didn't just like break a whole bunch of things by saying that. But anyways.
We had a forward-looking statement, so it's fine.
That thing covers everything.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. Let me get some things set up here on my end here. Great. So I'm here to discuss on how to actually help a nonprofit. And I think a lot of us here have found our experiences in the Salesforce ecosystem to have some sayings or have some things we've heard that have come up a lot over the years. And one of those things is, if you want some experience, go volunteer at a nonprofit, right, to gain your Salesforce experience. And so I would say that you should really think through that before you go down that journey. I know that the Salesforce ecosystem is full of people who want to help. And one of those ways, obviously, is by giving back and giving nonprofits a leg up. But if you ever heard the saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, you can really put a nonprofit in a bit of a hellscape with your good intentions if you are not very much aware of what would happen after you're after you're gone. So I wanted to take this time really to kind of talk through the story of two trailblazers that I worked with. Names have been changed, obviously, to protect their identities. But I think the story of Evelyn and Alan are actually very conducive of the similar journeys that a lot of people in the Trailblazer community have gone through, whether they're starting off or whether they're actually been in it for a while. Once they hear about this whole thing around volunteering in a nonprofit, it's sort of like this uncharted territory. There's been lots of things that have been written about it, and these are my thoughts here. But let's start with Evelyn. So Evelyn, when I met her, she was working as a barista, and like most others, wanted to find a job that would lead to a career. And so over the next 6 months, when I was working with her, she found Trailhead, she got hooked, started earning badges, even eventually got her admin certification. But when she was interviewing, which I'm sure a lot of you have gone out there into that world, she kept running into this phrase of not having, quote unquote, enough experience, right? Which is a huge catch-22, because if you have no experience, but no one's going to hire you, how do you gain enough experience to get the job that you're looking for? And so that's why I think this adage of go volunteer at a nonprofit seems to hit so many check boxes for people, right? They're like, oh, cool, I can get Salesforce experience so that employers will look at me. I'll be helping out a nonprofit, so that checks the feel good box for myself. So let's go for it, right? And so that's what Evelyn did, and actually that's the advice I gave her at the time as well, right? Heard the advice of go volunteer at a nonprofit to gain experience. Now, Evelyn was underneath, for various reasons, was underneath a sort of a time crunch. She needed to land a job quickly, so she started looking for nonprofits that needed help. She was going out there on the job boards that were looking for the volunteer things. She was speaking to people that she knew in the ecosystem, and eventually, she did find a place, and she was able to set up their Salesforce instance to track donations, really simple reports for the development team, just to get them off the Rolodex system that they had before. So she puts it on her resume, got some calls, eventually she lands a job. The nonprofit's happy with her work. All is well in her world, right? The employer was able to say, like, great, I see that you have some real world experience, so let's talk to you and eventually bring you on board. So Alan, similarly to Evelyn, also wanted to find a job that would lead to a different career. And similarly, also found Trailhead, also got hooked, earned badges, got the admin certification. And at the time, Alan actually was volunteering as a youth group leader, where everyone was keeping track of their notes and attendance on these kids on paper. You can imagine that it was a very tedious process. It was prone to many mistakes, and it was worse when people forgot to fill it in or turn them in. And so obviously there were gaps in their data depending on the week. And at the same time, all these other youth group leaders are also volunteers. So it's not like these are employees that you can hound to be like, give us this information. They're all volunteers as well. So while Alan was learning, though, he was starting to connect the dots, right? He could see the way that Salesforce would transform the work around this process and keep everyone on the same page. And so he went to the youth director, asked for permission to move forward, met with certain program alumni who also had Salesforce experience, and he built them a program app that made tracking all this stuff easier, and was also very poignant in asking, who's going to take this over when I'm gone, as he knew that he wasn't going to be around forever, right? Again, he was just volunteering. So while he was interviewing, he was able to point to this experience and speak passionately about it, and eventually he landed a job as well, right? Very much similar, in the same boat as Evelyn, where they're like, great, I see that you actually now have some real world experience. Let's talk. Now, the stories diverge a little bit here. In Evelyn's case, a month later, the nonprofit starts running into issues, and they have to ask Evelyn for help because she's the one who set them up, right? But understandably, she's very involved in her new job, and she can't answer their questions right away, right? Her response times start going from days to more days to more days to weeks. Eventually, the nonprofit is forced to find someone else that can help get them quicker answers because they're stuck. The nonprofit can't move forward on important work that has now all been migrated over to Salesforce, and they start to question, like, why did they ever do this transition in the first place? In Alan's case, about a few weeks later, in his world, when the youth director started running into issues, Alan actually was on hand. He was able to help them troubleshoot until they were able to identify someone on staff that would take everything over. He met with this person weekly, downloaded as much knowledge as possible to this other person, and reassured them that if he was available, if anything else went wrong. The director thanked him for his time, often tells this story when meeting with his counterparts in other nonprofits. And I think you can tell sort of the difference here already between the approach between Evelyn and Alan, right? Not to say that one's right or one's wrong, but definitely one sets up the nonprofit for success much more than the other one. The difference here is that Evelyn, whether good intention or not, was really only in it for herself, right? She saw that the nonprofit was like a checkbox, a pit stop on her way to getting, quote unquote, a real job. So when she got to her destination, her priorities were understandably elsewhere, right? Like, we were talking about road trips or things like this earlier, or maybe I imagined it. But how many of you, for example, on a road trip, think about a pit stop after you reach the destination? You really don't, unless it was a complete nightmare, right? So you think about this from the nonprofit side. How do you think they would have felt about this experience, right? As I said, they basically started questioning why they ever did this in the first place, didn't leave a good taste in their mouths on this. Alan, on the other hand, he grew up in this nonprofit, right? And he was, already built in with his dedication. So he cared a lot about their success or their failures because he wanted to see them succeed. Having being a volunteer them himself, he understood how little resources that they had and how the system could really change their work and really improve morale throughout the organization. Obviously, as long as someone was continuously in charge of it. So on that end, with Alan's story, obviously there's a whole different approach and a whole different outlook as to how this system could help out the organization, as well as a different outlook on the person, in this case, Alan, that was helping them set this up. Dustin, next slide, please. So as you listen to those stories, right? Maybe you identified a little more closely with Evelyn, or maybe you identified a little more closely with Alan. And I'm here to say, like, you should think about your journey or the people that you end up helping out, which you will along the way of your Salesforce journey, of, which one do you identify more with? Do you feel more like you're in Evelyn's shoes right now, or do you feel like you're more in Alan's shoes? So if you're in more of Evelyn's shoes, right, where like you're just trying to gain experience for the sake of gaining experience, I've linked in this slide the article that goes into much more detail about why you shouldn't do that, like why you shouldn't use nonprofits as a stepping stone or a playground, because they often lack resources to unpretzel the mistakes that were made while you were there learning Salesforce. And so my advice here really is to say that you should create your own work experience by applying Salesforce to real life problems and creating customized solutions. And again, this gets all more outlined in the articles, more so than I can talk about with my remaining time here. But you should also then practice telling the story of what you built for your interview process. And I would highly recommend that you join a local community group, the LA one, for example, when they meet in person, so that you can find some group partners and maybe do a group project together, because then you're learning to not only deal with the technology, but the people process behind this technology. And when you're done with it, you have a project that you can give recruiters or hiring managers access to as an interactive proof of work experience. The interesting thing is that, like, with people like me who've been in the ecosystem for a long time, I can't really actually share the work that I've done at work to a future recruiter because it's intellectual property. Whereas if you are building your own customized solution on Salesforce and you're exposing it on Experience Cloud, you can point to that all day long and be like, look at what I built. That's a very interesting difference there. If you or the people that you are mentoring identify more with Alan's journey, I would say that, take the key takeaways from there are to ensure that volunteers are clear about why they want to work with a nonprofit, and that they also are familiar with NPSP, and that they should have a reason as to why they really want to help out that nonprofit. In Alan's case, he was also able to work with an experienced mentor and have access to Salesforce admin or through the alumni network, and have someone on staff that they knew that they were going to pass this on to. And additionally, he was able to make himself available to address any mistakes and be in it for the long haul, right? One point that I do make on the flip side of this for nonprofits is that nonprofits should also have clear requirements, if possible, or strategies, and have some sort of investment mentality or existing infrastructure that can support having Salesforce or having these volunteers. A lot of times you hear this whole thing about people volunteering at a nonprofit, and then you do the thing, but nonprofits also have to realize that it can't just be like, I need a volunteer to set up Salesforce without any guidance, right? That's basically saying like, I need someone to work on my car without telling me anything that's wrong, and then they got to go in there and figure it out. Like, you've got to point them in the right direction somehow. Dustin, next slide, please. Yes, sorry. 4 screens and I'm looking at the wrong one. All right. So if you remember only one thing from the story between Evelyn and Alan, is these 2 things. If you only remember one thing, remember these 2 things. If you want to show that you have work experience, right, build your own, right? Apply Salesforce to real life problems, customize the solutions, work with a team if possible, and get that out there and basically show that you have what it takes to work inside Salesforce. If you are passionate about a nonprofit because you care about them and you're going to be in there for the long haul, like, they might be calling you up because things are going wrong at whatever times of the day, then you should definitely help out a nonprofit. And one of the many reasons why there's a huge difference, we could probably talk about this in the QA later, one of the huge differences between a nonprofit and any other organization is that there are safeguards in place in other organizations, mostly in the realms of resources and expertise, that sort of safeguard against someone being able to come in and mess everything up. Whereas what I've seen, and what I think a lot of people have seen in this ecosystem, is that when you volunteer at a nonprofit, you are the judge, jury, and executioner of Salesforce. And so there's no one to say that shouldn't be what you're going down the road on. Take a look at this, think about that. And so you get yourself into trouble very quickly, especially if you're a novice. Even some seasoned people I know in the Salesforce ecosystem, when they talk about volunteering a nonprofit, yes, there's less risk because they know a little bit more. But if they've never worked with NPSP or nonprofits or know anything about that, it's a whole nother animal. I mean, that's like saying, I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for 15 plus years. And if someone were to come to me and say like, we need you to implement CPQ, I'd be like, I need some help, because I have never dealt with CPQ in my entire life, at least in Salesforce. So that's the key takeaways from here. And I think another clear point from Alan, if you didn't get that key takeaway, is that you should definitely think about having a hands-off / exit strategy, right? In his case, he was very clear that like, I'm not going to be here forever. I will be able to help, but I need you all to obviously transition this over to someone for when I find my job. I can't obviously be on the phone with you all for 3 hours at a time. So that is my time with a minute to spare. I see there's a bunch of questions in there. I'm sure we'll get to that to the end. But with that, I will now pass this over to Paige to talk about highly anticipated nonprofit cloud.
Okay, great. So Paige Van Riper is a partner delivery success director at Salesforce for the nonprofit industry, where she engages, evaluates, educates, and enables partners. And she has spent over 20 years in nonprofit management. Paige has been in the Salesforce ecosystem for 15 years, first as a nonprofit customer, then as the founder and leader of a Salesforce nonprofit user group at an ISV and for a consulting partner. She is a 5-star Salesforce Ranger. She's also been a great mentor to me. Years ago, she was my supervisor, and I learned so much about Salesforce under her supervision. She has so much knowledge and expertise to share, and I'm very excited to be introducing her today.
And hiring Laura was one of the best decisions I made.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And Gordon, thanks for that. Definitely, I have seen many examples of where this did not go well, and that we as a consulting partner, nonprofit had to find money to bring us in to fix things that well-meaning folks had done. So, definitely a good message. But today we are here to talk about the new nonprofit cloud. Next slide, please. So again, I work for Salesforce, have to have the forward-looking statement. Please make your decisions based on currently available technology and not on any forward-looking statement I might make today. So Salesforce for nonprofits, which is kind of the umbrella term. I'm going to break down a few terms for you because it gets a little confusing sometimes. So Salesforce for nonprofits is kind of what we call the whole suite of products. We used to call it nonprofit cloud, and now you'll see why We're now using that as the product name instead. So Salesforce for Nonprofits is developing our next generation of products to take full advantage of the power, scale, and innovation of the full Salesforce 360 platform, including components built by Salesforce Industries, of which we are now considered industries, nonprofit and education. So for the first time, our products are going to be built on core. So instead of being a managed package which sits on top of the platform, we are being built in core. And that will be accessible to both other industries and compatible with other industry products. We're going to seek to reuse and adapt across platforms and other industries' work. And we're going to build functionality that will be reused by others. So there's some great things, for example, being built by public sector that we've taken advantage of. And for example, one of the tools that we're building, others are going to take advantage of. So there's a lot of that that's happening, and that's part of the reason we're doing this. Building on the core Salesforce platform allows us to innovate faster and provide customers with more robust solutions, which are interoperable and which provide customers with better time to value. All of Salesforce is embracing this move toward interoperability. This is the direction the company is moving as a whole. So interoperability, reusability, and breaking down technical barriers between industries while preserving the unique industry focus, which makes our solutions relevant for our customers. So by making this change now, we provide our customers with greater interoperability with the entire Salesforce product portfolio, better scalability, and a clearer path to take advantage of major product innovation. So that's kind of some of the why behind it. Go to the next slide. So this is a little bit of the timeline as to when this is happening. So we released the Nonprofit Cloud product in March 14th. And that new Nonprofit Cloud SKU includes Sales and Service Cloud licenses, what we refer to as industry common components, and we'll talk a bit more about that. And then it's got programs and case management in it. As you'll see in the summer release, we are going to be releasing Nonprofit Cloud for grant making. And then in the winter release, we are going to be adding, so that grant making SKU is going to be sold separately as an add-on, but for the Nonprofit Cloud SKU, which already has program and case management, come the winter, we're going to be adding on fundraising and outcomes management without increasing the price. Those are just going to be added in. Just a few things to note about that fundraising is we are not rebuilding NPSP on core, right? We are looking at what are the really good parts of NPSP that nonprofits need, but also what other things do they need? And this is our first release of it. So it's not going to include all of the features that NPSP has. So for example, this release in the winter, it's not going to contain payment features, and it's not going to have insights data integrity features at this time, if you're familiar with that. If you see across all of this, we are talking about our existing managed package solutions, things like Nonprofit Success Pack, Program Management Module, Case Management, etc. Those are not changing and they're not going anywhere. So don't get worried about that. And we're going to continue to fully support and enhance those solutions. So you'll see in our upcoming release, we're going to have some new features for the new Nonprofit Cloud, as well as some new stuff on our existing managed package products. I also want to talk for a minute about ISVs. So you probably all are familiar with some of our ISV partners, things that you find on the App Exchange. And we have a lot of ISV partners that have fantastic integrations with our current products. We are working with them, and this is one of the audiences I work with because I'm working directly with partners to make sure that they are going to be successful with the new products. So we're working with them to ensure that they understand our new product architecture and are able to bring their years of experience and learnings into the new Nonprofit Cloud. Next. All right, so just a little bit more about kind of what was released in March. So again, here's the pricing for it. We've got the full, and that's list pricing. I should always mention that that's list pricing. You would want to talk to your account executive about what the pricing would be for your nonprofit, because there's a lot of variability, and so it's always best to talk to your account executive. But we're just giving you some idea. So you get included with that is a full Sales and Service Cloud license. Again, we've got the composable case management, the program management, accounting subledger growth is included in that. And then down here at the bottom, you see the list of what I referred to before, the industry common components. things like Omni Studio, Business Rules Engine, Industry Sales Excellence, and more. These things are things that come with a license, so you will find them used in our product, but they are also things that you or your partner can use to extend the product. And some of these are pretty powerful and robust tools. And that gets included with all of this. And they will say, in addition to this, with the summer release, we will be adding additional ones as well. Next. So Power of Us program and your 10 free licenses. So at this point, nonprofits now have a choice. They can choose to go with the 10 licenses of sales and service and NPSP, or they can choose to go with the new nonprofit cloud. So we are donating 10 licenses of either one of those, and it's the nonprofit's choice. And it will be that way for some time. Right now, the default is giving them NPSP, but if you feel like your nonprofit wants to take advantage of the new nonprofit cloud, then the AE can go in and do all the paperwork and make sure that's happening. Eventually, we'll kind of switch that. But again, NPSP will continue to be available as an option for nonprofits. And I wanted to add, we see over here that we have the possible future inclusion of some analytics products. So stay tuned for that. We're working to add even more things into these 10 free licenses. So our commitment remains the same to nonprofits. Next, please. So just some places, if you're not already in these places, these are some great places to get information that's being shared. So the Salesforce.org hub group and the Trailblazer community, that's where we do all general .org announcements. And then also the nonprofit release readiness group is another one that's really good to be in. That's where we put our release notes, and you'll see those on the sidebar in that group, and also just make product announcements. And we had some with the links to some of the announcements we've recently made on some of these topics here. Next slide, please. All right, so I also wanted to let you know that for the new nonprofit cloud, we have new badges and new trails on Trailhead. So if you're curious about these products, if you want to learn more, these are a great way to do that. I'm going to point out one in particular, which is the stakeholder management in nonprofit cloud. One of the things that's really important to understand about nonprofit cloud is it is a new data model. It's a new account data model. So it is different than our managed package products. And it's something called person accounts. And then we have something called the party model that does the householding piece of it. So it's going to look very different. It's going to act very different. And you may have heard about person accounts in the past. It may not always have been positive. I will tell you that a lot has changed in the world of person accounts. And part of the reason we're going with this is because all of the different industries, so financial services cloud, health cloud, and we have nonprofits that are on both of those clouds as a nonprofit, all using the same data model. Education using the same data model. That way, all of these, again, that's that interoperability. These will all work together. It's not like right now where you can't install EDA in an org with NPSP because they won't work together. It will all work seamlessly across there. But I do also want to point out that because it is a different data model, you're probably not going to be able to mix and match our managed package products along with the new nonprofit cloud because they are different data models that are going to be at odds with each other. So that is an important thing to understand. But again, I encourage you to check it out. And we have available, and I think today they even released some pre-release org, so you can even see what's coming in the summer release. But you can go out there and get what's called a learning org or a pre-release org, which has the nonprofit cloud in it. It's good for 30 days, and you can go in and play around with it. And it's got some sample data. I wouldn't say a ton of it, but at least a little bit to give you some idea of how it all works. So, there's links from the trails to get that org. There also, it was just posted in the nonprofit release readiness group today, how you can get those orgs. So that, I think, concludes my presentation. And I haven't been looking at the questions, but we can start to take some of those if they haven't been answered.
Paige, we did have a resources slide we just wanted to share. And then I was going to share some architect ones, and then we can go into Q&A if that's fine.
Yeah.
Did you want to expand on these, Paige, or just leave it?
Oh,
We can just leave it.
sorry.
It's fine. No, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I didn't know if you wanted to speak to these since you're with .org.
But you can go ahead. actually.
Okay. So anyway, the slide is here. The resources are here. We just wanted to have some links for people to have as a follow-up, and so you can look into these more. Once we're off the call, we'll send out a recording and the deck, so you'll have these. I did want to mention too the pro bono program, Paige, and feel free to correct me if I don't get this right. But one thing I agree with all the points Gordon made about making sure you really understand NPSP if you're going to go help a nonprofit. I find a lot of folks don't even know about the pro bono program. So it actually pairs Salesforce employees with nonprofits for specific projects. So they have those pro bono services, and the employee gains experience, and they also have best practice guidance. This is a great program, and I wish more nonprofits knew about this. So I just wanted to mention it here. Did I get that right, Paige?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And these are Salesforce employees. There is some structure around it to help make sure that they understand about nonprofits and about our products. So so it's not just Salesforce employees that may work in something completely different. We want to make sure that they're getting that understanding before they start to work with the orgs.
Great. Anything else on this one, Paige? And I can add some architect resources.
Nope. I think that, the Salesforce how-to series is great for the videos for managed package products. Always a great resource. And there's a ton of resources on Trailhead about our different, both the managed package products and the new nonprofit cloud. So that's always a great place to start. And some of them even have you install it in org, which is always the best way to understand. I tell people who are preparing for the nonprofit cloud consultant certification, which is something I'm very involved with, the best thing you can do is go install NPSP in an org and play around with it, or install some of our other products to really understand how they work.
Great, thanks, Paige. Next slide, Dustin. Thanks. So I also just want to share some general Salesforce architect resources. So the slide is in the deck, but just the definition of one. Salesforce has a great framework called Well Architected. So just wanted to provide a link to that. Ways you can also follow them on their blog and social media. Okay. And did any of the presenters want to add anything else before we switch to Q&A? No? Okay. Well, Jessie left, but thank you so much to Gordon and Paige for coming. I'm going to actually stop recording so we can speak freely for Q&A. So 1 second.